What's up, everyone? Welcome into the stream. We have got some excellent college football action ahead of us today. I am super excited to talk about the plays that we have today. We are covering so many different college football games. We've got SMU, TCU, Utah, Texas Tech, Arkansas, Memphis. We're going to go down here to Michigan, Nebraska, Auburn, Oklahoma. Let's see, what else are we going to cover here? Ole Miss, Tulane. We've also got Indiana, Illinois. We're going to try to talk about Missouri and South Carolina, Baylor, Arizona State. Let's see some more games down here. Miami versus Florida. Let me know any game that you'd like me to talk about, and I could give a brief preview of each of them. Even the group of five games. I mean, Colorado State, UTSA down here. I mean, I'm not the most knowledgeable college football person in the world, but I'd like to think that I know a decent amount. But for starters, everyone, we're going to be talking about Red Raiders going to Utah, Texas Tech versus Utah. This is a road game for the Red Raiders. And what we've seen so far from this team, if we look at the sides here and just take a look at the game log, this Texas Tech offense has been on fire. But the commonality of all of these games is that they have yet to play a real opponent, in my opinion. They've got Arkansas, Pine Bluff, Kent State, and Oregon State here on their schedule to start the year. That's nothing to write home about. Meanwhile, Utah took care of business versus UCLA on the road, which, now 4 weeks into the season, that win doesn't mean that much because this UCLA team is 0-3. They fired their head coach and their offense is atrocious. So a 43-10 win is great. If that win was closer, I'd be more alarmed given how bad UCLA is. But once again, similarly to Texas Tech, this Utah team has yet to play anybody. But the one thing that they have different from Texas Tech is they have 2 wins on the road. We've yet to see this Texas Tech team on the road. If we look at their offense on the road last year, they scored 26, 34, 23, 56. I mean, they're still a very good offense, but I believe that Utah's defense is excellent. They are out of this world talented. They've been holding opponents to under 10 points or under a game their first 3 games of the season. Once again, not a ton of difficult competition between the two teams. So it's hard to gauge what they're going to look like head to head. I do lean towards Utah in this game. They're -3.5. That is not a spread that I would really like to get after. I think Texas Tech offensively has a far more talented team than Utah. When you look at Utah, their offensive line does the talking for the team. They have a few NFL prospects on that offensive line. Their left tackle, I believe, is going to be a top 10 pick in the draft. Meanwhile, Texas Tech's skill group is unbelievable. Baron Morton is their quarterback. He's been there for quite some time now. He's lit up so many Big 12 defenses throughout his career. Their offensive skill group, their running backs aren't anything to write home about. They are missing Taj Boyd from last year. He was a star at running back, but their wide receiver group, in my opinion, is one of the best in the Big 12. So be sure to be looking out for this Texas Tech offense as we go throughout the season. But here in this spot on the road versus a great defense in Utah, I'm not 100% certain as to how Texas Tech's offense will perform, especially given the fact that this is an early morning game. This kickoff is at 11 a.m. Central. For a Big 12 game, that's pretty rare, especially all the way out in Utah where it's 9 a.m. So let's go ahead and hop right into my player props that I've had picked out for this game. First up, we're going to be looking at Baron Morton, and he has a long pass here of 43.5. That's his player prop. And at -110 for the under, I kind of like it. And if we want to filter this out and talk about on the road, Baron Morton has been kind of shut down. I mean, specifically looking at 2024 and beyond, he's hitting this under in 60% of his games. Meanwhile, Utah is unbelievable against the pass. They play a lot of man-to-man. This is a very aggressive Utah defense. Can they get to Baron Morton? I definitely think they can. They have the pass rushers to do it. Texas Tech is not known for their offensive line. However, Baron Morton, of course, has not gotten the or he doesn't have the dual threat ability that a lot of other quarterbacks have. So look out for Utah's pass rush versus Baron Morton. I don't think he's going to be able to get off these explosive passes. As we could see versus Iowa State last year, he failed to do that. That's a team comparable to this Utah team right now. Given the fact that it's on the road as well, makes me think that the under here of 43.5 is going to hit. So let's go ahead and track that up. We've got under 43.5 at underdog for minus 110. We'll go ahead and grab that and continue to go. So next up that I want to talk about, let's get into Cameron Dickey, running back number 2 for this Texas Tech team. As far as I can see, Jacoby Williams, who is just now getting his first few starts under his belt as the running back 1 for Texas Tech, he's going to be taking the lion's share of the workload, while Cameron Dickey probably is going to be taking a back seat. Let's take a look at Dickey and what he's been able to do so far this season. In 3 games, he's averaging around 13-ish carries a game, about 50-ish yards, or maybe a little bit more than that, maybe about 60, 65 yards. But once again, these are versus defenses that are not nearly as stout as Utah. And for his line to be at 56.5, for the running back to have him split carries with Jacoby Williams versus this Utah defense, I definitely think that they're going to be able to put a stop to that. I would love the under 56.5 here at plus 115 at ProfitX. If you got a ProfitX account, that's great. You could buy that up to 58.5. You can get it at under 61.5 here at FanDuel for minus 112. If you have a question, by the way, about any of these player props, how we're shopping them, be sure to ask me in the comments. I'm using the doinksports.com tool here to leverage and educate myself to figure out where exactly the value is on all of the major sports books across America. This is a great tool for anybody who's going to be hedging, betting, leveraging today. This is it. Check it out. Use code Plaisant for any purchase, 25% off. It's a great deal. Take a look at it. You can view one of these major games for free today. And then after that, be sure to check out some of the options there for purchasing. Let's continue, though. We've got under 61.5 rushing yards here. Looking at this prop for Utah, they allow it for their running back ones. But given the fact that this is a split backfield here where clearly the running backs here are not going to be a bell cow back, I definitely think Cameron Dickey under 61.5 at FanDuel is a great selection. So we'll go ahead and chalk that one up as well. And we'll get to moving on here. Let's continue. We've got some more props in for this game. So looking at the team props here, we've got actually not the team props, the over-under. The over-under in this game is 57.5. And now if you look at this line, you see that Utah is consistently hitting the under 57.5 in the 70% of the time they're under. Only 30% of the games they go over. Meanwhile, Texas Tech is soaring the over. But here's what I want to factor in. Let's talk about this game in its reality. Utah is at home, where once again, they're only hitting the over 30% of the time. And Texas Tech is on the road. And as we can see here, that over-under switches from 90% to 40%. And that's the factor here that I want everyone to consider. Obviously, we're delving back into 2023, but let's look at 2024 and beyond. It's a 50-50 split. And the games that are going over, TCU, they didn't have a great defense last year. Oklahoma State, they didn't have a great defense last year. That Oklahoma State team was god-awful. Arkansas in the bowl game, once again, that's a bowl game. It's not something that we're trying to chalk up here. But look at the games that are comparable to Utah. At Iowa State, at Arizona, at Washington State. Those 3 games are what I'm looking at. And as we can see here, not only are they low scoring, 28-22, 37-16, and 23-22, I think that Utah's defense is better. And as we can see here on the left, Utah has been stout in the majority of their games. They had 31 points allowed on them against Iowa State. But other than that, they're allowing 22, 13, 23, 12, 0, 17, 3. This is a Utah defense that is excellent. And the reason that I go back all the way into 2023 for this Utah team is because they bring back a lot of continuity and consistency. I think this is an early morning game. It's a road game for the better road team, or for the road team, or it is a morning game for the better offense, which is the road team. It's against a Utah defense that I think is very good. Texas Tech's defense, by the way, is something to write home about. They spent a ton of money in the transfer portal to pick up a great group of guys. Romello Height being one of them. He's an excellent pass rusher. He's going to be in charge of slowing down Utah's dual threat quarterback. I'm going to go back to these player props and talk about that for just a second. Devin Dampier, who has lit the board up. He was originally at New Mexico, I believe. Let me make sure that's right. Let's go see and look at his game log. Yes, at New Mexico last year, comes in with his offensive coordinator to Utah, and he's been lighting up the board. I mean, he's averaging around 270 total yards per game. He has thrown for 7 touchdowns. He's run for another one. I don't think he hasn't thrown an interception. This is a playmaker that doesn't make a ton of mistakes. I'm a big fan of his, but that Texas Tech pass rush specifically is going to have to stop the dual threat of Devin Dampier. I think that they can do it better than most. And so that's why, going back to these over-under props, I like the under 57.5. We can shop that around and take a look that you can get this at minus 110, under 58.5. That's what we'll be tracking here, because I think there's a tremendous amount of value in buying that extra point. 57.5, by the way, is at at Nexus, I think, or Novig, excuse me. That's not a major sports book. FanDuel's got it at minus 105. You're buying a point here for five differential points. I think that's worth a bet right there at ESPN minus 110. Let's pull it up. There it is. Let's go ahead and grab that as well. I've given a lot of explanation here as to why I think Utah is going to be able to slow down this Texas Tech offense. And I don't necessarily think Utah's offense is that great, in my opinion. So we've got 3 props so far for this game. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a lot more to go, because this is a college football slate worthy of looking at a ton of this action. Last thing I want to talk about is Texas Tech plus 3.5. Now, I mentioned earlier that I don't love this right now. I've seen a ton of models where Texas Tech wins this game. If we look at them as a 3.5-point underdog, they've hit it 70% of the time. Utah, as a 3.5-point favorite, has struggled, especially against conference play. Let's look at that. UCF, Iowa State, Colorado, BYU, Houston, TCU, Arizona State. They're all conference play from last year, and Utah only covered the spread against one of them, and that was a UCF team who I think was pretty atrocious, in my opinion. So I like Texas Tech here, plus 3.5. If we look at them on the road, they're hitting it at 60%. I think that's pretty impressive. And the majority of them, like I said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all 6 of their spread coverages are against in-conference teams. The ones that they're not, BYU was an excellent team last year, and that was on the road. Looking at all away games here, Texas, Washington State, Arkansas, that was a bowl game once again. I think this Texas Tech team can get it done on the road. I just don't know if their offense is going to explode. I'm expecting this game to be about 27-20 Texas Tech. If you want to take the money line at plus 154, by all means, be my guest. For me, I'm going to ride with that extra half a point. I think Texas Tech can win this game by at least a field goal, but I also think if they lose, they keep it extremely close. So let's shop this around here. We got plus 3.5 at minus 106. If we hit this little squiggly line here, that obviously is a graphic, we click that and we can see what other sports books are offering here for 3.5. Bet365, Caesars, FanDuel, all has it at minus 110. Let's go ahead and keep moving on, though. Texas Tech plus 3.5. That is a pick for me. Now, I think that's it for this game for me. Let me double check that real quick, because I've got all these written down. Once again, if you got a prop that you have a question about, if you want to know what my outlook on a game is, just let me know. And if you want to view more college football, NBA, NFL content, be sure to check me out at Plaisant on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You can find all of my sports content there. I pretty much post daily on all three of those platforms. I think I post good content, but you let me know what you think. I have some freezing cold takes that are so cold they're boiling hot. Be sure to check that out. And once again, I'll plug Doink Sports again. Be sure to visit doinksports.com. Look at this yourself. You want to educate and leverage yourself. If you're just playing on, one or two different books here, you're losing some kind of juice somewhere. I mean, you might get lucky and have a Caesars account and get the best line there, but for the majority of these games, odds are you're not using the best sports book. So be sure to leverage yourself against all of the books. It's unbelievable how much they win. It's time that you do some winning too. So be sure to check out doinksports.com. Use code Plizont. That's PLIZONT for 25% off of any purchase. All right. Now, that being said, I believe we are moving into our next game. We're going to be talking about Arkansas, Memphis. Now, this is a really interesting game for me because I'm curious to see what Arkansas looks like on the road in kind of a trap game here. Memphis, only a 7-point underdog, yet obviously Arkansas as a Power Four conference team is heavily favored, but not favored enough, in my opinion. If we look at Arkansas on their sides against teams that are not named SEC teams, they do unbelievable against the spread here. Mississippi State minus 33. That's not a group of five team, but let's look at some other group of five teams. Louisiana Tech covered it easily. Alabama A&M, FCS opponent, dominated them. Arkansas State, group of five team, dominated them. Let's look at Arkansas in the Sam Pittman era. This is something that is great about coaches that have been there for a while. We can see how they perform regularly throughout the last 3 or 4 years. So we could filter this out to the last 30 games. We could look at some group of five opponents here. Arkansas State, Alabama A&M, Louisiana Tech. Let's keep going. Let's look. UAB, they did a good enough job. Arkansas Pine Bluff, of course, an FCS cool. FIU, they cover the spread easily. Moving back even further into 2023, Kent State dominated them. Western Carolina destroyed them. I think this Arkansas team is good enough. And what I'm really excited about is their explosive offense. They have been tremendous throughout this season. Talon Green, especially. I mean, he is putting on a clinic versus a ton of these teams. So let's go ahead and hop into some of these props. I think if you look at Memphis, the games that they are not winning, by the way, we're looking at this margin here against the spread. They're hitting it at 90% of the time. But if we filter out Memphis and look at their schedule here, let's try to find a home game versus an SEC team. That's a tough one to find here. I do not think we're going to be able to do it, as a matter of fact. Iowa State, no. Florida State, no. I don't think that they have played an SEC opponent. If we look at their last 10 games, specifically the ones to start this season, they're doing great. I mean, they dominated Chattanooga 45-10. Georgia State, they also got the better hand of them. Georgia State, that team, by the way, is decimated from the transfer portal, I believe. So that is a rough game there. But look at this. The over-under in these games is at 57.5, 51.5. They're not expecting Memphis's defense to be that great. They've performed well so far throughout this season. They got a great win versus Troy. That's a Troy team, by the way, who played Clemson extremely close. So this Memphis team is definitely something to write home about. But Arkansas and their offense have just been absolutely tremendous throughout the first part of this season. I mean, putting up 35 points against Ole Miss on the road is extremely impressive. So with that being said, I am going to be taking Arkansas -7 in this game. If you could shop that down to -6.5, let's see what kind of lines we can get here. I mean, FanDuel's got it at -130. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I'm not a guy who likes taking props at anything over -120 just because you're having to give up 30 cents on the dollar. That's a lot of juice to give to the books. So I'll shop this at -7. We could see here at let's track this up. We've got Bet365 minus 115, BetMGM at minus 115. So that half a point buying 15 points back, I think is definitely worth it. So I will officially be hammering this at -7. But let's go ahead and continue and talk about my other props for this game. I love Talon Green. I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, top 10, in my opinion, so far this season. I mean, he's averaging almost 400 yards of offense a game. I mean, here he's gotten over 360. Here he got damn near 400. And here he got over 400 versus Ole Miss. He is one of the best dual threats in the country. He's averaging over, shoot, let's see, in his last 5 games, he's averaging 88 yards rushing. He is tremendous getting outside the pocket. His completion percentage has not been the worst in the world, especially given the fact that that's not his traditional strength. He's not a traditional pocket passer, but these yards every single game are unbelievably impressive. So the prop that I like for Talon Green in this game is over 19 and a half completions. He's hitting this at 60% of the time. And looking at his 3 games to start the season, he's throwing the rock 35, 31, 26, 35 attempts. That's averaging around 31, 32 attempts per game. I'm very impressed with what I've seen so far. And if we look at Memphis and look at some of these traditional passers that go and absolutely torch them, I mean, specifically Chandler Morris, who, in my opinion, was one of the best group of 5 quarterbacks last year. He threw for 455 yards, well over that 19 and a half completions. I think we can actually shop this down to 18 and a half. Well, actually, never mind. We cannot no longer. That prop has been taken away by the one and only sports book that was offering it. I believe it was Underdog, but I'm still a fan of taking this over 19 and a half. Talon Green's hitting that on 60% of his games. The games that he's going under are SEC matchups. Ole Miss, Texas, Missouri, or not even Missouri, Texas Tech last year. I don't think he played the second half of that game. I could be wrong about that. Either that or it was just such a route that they didn't need to pass the ball. Arkansas State, a blowout where he got benched, I believe, in the 3rd quarter. So this is a Talon Green that is completely different this upcoming season. I think on the road versus Memphis, they're going to try to get the pass game rolling. They're going to try to score a lot of points early. This Memphis team offensively is going to try to fire back. I think it's going to be a higher scoring game in the first half and a lower scoring one in the second half. So I definitely think Talon Green is going to hit this over 19 and a half completions. And if we want to take a look at some major sports books, Hard Rock is becoming more and more popular, but I don't think a lot of people have access to it right now. So we'll go to Underdog, which I think a good amount of people do have access to. We'll track that at 10.6 here at minus 106. I think that's a good line there. Now let's continue through this game. Let me take a look at the rest of my picks. We've got coinciding with this Talon Green over 19 and a half. I'm looking at Omega Blake, who kind of came out of nowhere from last year. His game log is extremely impressive, but he was originally at Charlotte. I believe that was Biff Poggi's team, who's now the interim head coach at Michigan. But he transfers from Charlotte, comes to Arkansas, and he has been electric so far. In his first 3 games with the Razorbacks, he's averaging 6 catches a game for about 80-ish yards. He scored a touchdown in all 3 of them. I love coinciding with Talon Green over completions. I love Omega Blake over, I believe. Let's take a look at this. Make sure I got this right. Over 5.5 receptions. Yes, that's the prop that I wanted to take. Memphis, when facing a strong wide receiver 1, Ted Hurst, Hudson Clement was a great wide receiver 1 last year. I think this is a excellent prop to take. Omega Blake has been far and away the wide receiver 1. He's getting about 25% of the target share. I think he's going to easily catch over 5.5 balls today. And at plus 120, I think that's pretty good value there. So we'll go ahead and track that up as well. This is a bet that just kind of goes with Talon Green and what he offers here in the pass game on the road for Arkansas. And then I already talked about Arkansas -7. I am very Razorback centric right now in my props for Memphis or for this Memphis game. I really don't like a lot of these for Memphis right now. Looking at Brendan Lewis, once again, transfer, I believe, coming from uh, Mountain West team, I think. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, he was with Nevada last year, goes to another group of five school that's trying to get into the Big 12 in Memphis. But so far throughout this season, he's been a great dual threat. I mean, he's averaging around 60-ish yards per game on the ground, and his pass game just hasn't been off the charts. I mean, looking at these lines, 227 and a half passing, he's yet to hit that with Memphis. And then Arkansas, on the other hand, it's tough to get a gauge on that because they've played Alabama A&M, Arkansas State, and Ole Miss. Like looking at the spectrum of college football, right? Obviously, Ole Miss is a top 25 caliber program, whereas Alabama A&M, FCS, they're off the scale on the other end. And then Arkansas State is down near that 120th percentile ranking. I do not like looking at any of these props because it's hard to tell what Arkansas's defense is going to look like. Number one, on the road, and number two, versus a dual threat quarterback that they're obviously going to be game planning for. So, with that being said, I'm staying away from the majority of these props. Sutton Smith, who has had two great games versus Georgia State and Troy on the road, his prop is at 60 and a half. That's extremely high. I mean, Arkansas's defense has been stout against running back ones. Uh, Kewan Lacey did not have a good game at all versus them. That pass game is really what took off for Ole Miss. So if I had to take anything, I would take the under 60 and a half here for Sutton Smith. I think Arkansas's defense is pretty good. I mean, we could see here group of five opponent last year, Marquise Crosby, only 8 carries for 17 yards. Texas, Trey Wisner, who people regard as one of the better backs in the SEC this year, really struggled, 17 carries for 59 yards. That's not great for Texas standards. Henry Parrish, 10 carries for 22. I think Arkansas's run defense is pretty good, if I do say so. So I will stay away. If I had to lean anywhere, take a look at this Sutton Smith prop for under 60 and a half. So we've only covered 2 games. So ladies and gentlemen, whether you like it or not, we're going to be going well over an hour of time here. I am going to get into at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more games in the next hour. So we're going to have to speed this up a little bit. Let's continue and talk about SMU TCU. Now, this SMU team got into a shootout with Baylor a couple of weeks ago. They end up losing to an overtime field goal, I believe. Let's take a look at the sides here. SMU plus 6.5, TCU minus 6.5. The average score that I got in a lot of my simulations was a little skewed. It had TCU scoring about 55 points and SMU only scoring 15. Do I think TCU is going to blow them out by 40? Absolutely not. This SMU offense is still excellent, in my opinion. They struggled versus Missouri State, but I think that was because of a letdown loss to Baylor in overtime, 48-45. This TCU offense, by the way, has only played 2 games, but they've been rolling. 48 and 42 points. That 48, by the way, extremely impressive opening game on the road versus North Carolina. They struggled. I believe this is Abilene Christian. Yeah, this is Abilene Christian, and they were struggling against them defensively. That's an interesting thing to think about, but I'm sure, as we can see here, first, second, third quarter, it looks like this was just a first half blowout where they were already up 28-0, and Abilene Christian just got back into this game and scored some garbage time touchdowns. So nothing to panic about here for this TCU team. Their starters are extremely good. I'm specifically talking about a guy like Josh Hoover, which people have not been talking about him because he doesn't have the stats that a lot of these other quarterbacks have because he's only played in 2 games. But he has been tremendous. Going to look at his player props here, he only played that first half, I believe, versus Abilene Christian. So let's take a look at Josh Hoover. And I mean, my God, he was excellent. these first two games. In that first half, he threw for 337, 4 touchdowns. Against North Carolina, 284, 2 touchdowns and an interception. And obviously, they are leaning heavily that this TCU team, these are the books, by the way. Look at all these lines. They are thinking that TCU is going to be running up the score because looking at Josh Hoover's stat line in his last 5 games, he's he's not even coming remotely close to hitting any of these projected props here. His pass total is at 322 and a half. That's insane, ladies and gentlemen. We have a 300-yard projected passer. I don't even know what to say about that. So if you're going to fade anything, I definitely wouldn't touch any of these lines. Maybe take a look at fading that over under 37 and a half pass attempts. As a matter of fact, I see a tremendous amount of value in that. I don't think this TCU offense is going to be throwing 38 times in this game. This SMU team is good, but they're not that good. I think TCU will comfortably or have a comfortable lead going into the third and fourth quarter. And so over 37 and a half passing, let's take a look and find the best odds here. Underdogs got it at 118. We'll hammer that as well. Let's track that up. But I want to get into the major props that I have here. TCU minus 6.5 is the pick for me today. This TCU team at home has been tremendous, especially in their last 4 games. They've gotten a ton of momentum towards the latter part of their season. Going into this year, they've been tremendous. I thought the North Carolina win was a statement win. Obviously, Bill Belichick has his work cut out for him. I don't think that the North Carolina team was as good as people were thinking they were going to be. But looking at SMU on the road, they really have not had to play too many great opponents. We've got Louisville is probably their best win out of everything, but I don't think this SMU team is as good as they were last year. They lose a decent amount of offensive production. Their running back ends up going to the NFL. Kevin Jennings is still there. RJ Maryland is still there. But as we could see, this defense is questionable to say the least against good offensive teams. They let Baylor hang 48 on them, and that wasn't like a spurt. Baylor was consistently putting up points throughout that game. I don't think that this SMU defense is going to be nearly as good as they were last year. As you could see here versus Cal, Virginia, even Boston College and Duke, they held them to under 4 touchdowns, which is pretty impressive for an SMU team that just entered the ACC last year. But once again, I do not think this is the same team as last year. A lot of these games here are pretty lopsided. They're not going to be the same this season. I think TCU has a tremendous home field advantage here. I'm going to be taking the minus 6.5 because I think TCU's defense is excellent. We see this 21 versus Abilene Christian, but that was in the second half, as you could see right here. They scored all 21 points in the second half after TCU had a 28-0 lead. I believe they actually went up 35-0 and then benched all of their starters. So I think this TCU team is dominant. 6.5, you can find that. You can get it at -7 plus 110. Let's track that up and take a look at some other places. Fanatics has got it at -120. Look for a major sports books that's offering this. ESPN's got it at plus 100. I think that's great. Take the -6.5 plus 100 ESPN. Let's continue to talk about these games. I believe there's one more prop that I like here before we move on, and that's the under 31.5 for the first half of this game. Looking at both of these teams in the first half, they're under in a lot of these games. TCU has only been over this in the first half, 32.5. We could shop that around and take a look here. I don't even know what sports book this is. Bookmakers got it at -106. They're the only sports book offering that. Let's take a look at 33.5. They're also the only sports book offering that. So I think 32.5 is where you're going to start getting your lines here. FanDuel's got it at -105. So that's the one we're going to be looking at. 32.5 Both of these teams have struggled to do this. We see it happen during that Baylor game, but on the road, uh, SMU has not done this in one, two, three, four, yeah, four their last four games, including that game versus Missouri State, which they played on the road, by the way. Very interesting. I'm very curious to see what this team looks like on the road yet again. TCU has been a great defense in the first half. I don't think this TCU team is going to allow SMU to throw a ton of passes and get them completed for points. 10%, 30%. That is a great coinciding line there. I like the under 32 and a half. So let's go ahead and track that. We'll take under 32 and a half. Caesars, or I'm sorry, BetMGM's got it at minus 105. We'll track it there. Let's continue. Let's move on because we still have a ton of games to go. Let's talk about Auburn, Oklahoma. This is probably going to be my favorite game of the day. I love both of these teams. I think Auburn is extremely underrated, but I think Oklahoma, if it wasn't for their schedule, would be a national title contending team. I just think that the games that they've got to play going forward are extremely hard, a lot of them on the road. I don't love it. So looking at this game, Jackson Arnold, former Oklahoma quarterback, transfers over to Auburn. He had some amazing performances on the ground for Oklahoma. As you could see here versus LSU, 75 yards, Alabama, 133 yards. Didn't score any touchdowns in that game. But let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this right here is a touchdown machine. I mean, he scored 2 versus Baylor in the first game, 2 versus South Alabama in his third game with Auburn. I don't know how good of a passer he is. We've yet to see him perform at a high level in the passing game versus a team that is up to par with a Oklahoma defense. And his line right now is at 174 and a half. And as you can see, Oklahoma in their last 10 games has been shutting down quarterbacks. And some of these guys are NFL caliber guys. I mean, obviously, Blake Horvath in the triple option at Navy is not a guy that we're talking about NFL, but he's a run-first quarterback. Of course, we chalk that line. Bryce Underwood is an excellent young quarterback. I definitely think that he's worth his salt. And they were able to hold that Michigan offense to 142 yards passing. Jalen Milroe, 164 yards passing. Brent Venables made this guy look like he could never play in the NFL. Now, on the road, Garrett Nussmeier, 277. If we take a look at Oklahoma at home last year, that 174 and a half, the only people that hit the over, Nico Iamaleava, who was one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC, Quinn Ewers, who was one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC last year, and then Lenore Sellers, which everybody talks about how much they love Lenore Sellers. Looking at some of these other games, it's just not even close. I definitely think that Oklahoma can hold Jackson Arnold under 174 and a half, and using the Doink Sports tool, we can shop this around. So be sure to look at this website, doinksports.com. It's definitely one that you're going to want to take a look at because you can leverage yourself and look at every sports book out there. You can see where there's value and where there isn't. And in my opinion, there's a tremendous amount of value in under 174 and a half. We're going to take a look at some of the other sports books that are offering this. So let's shop it around. We don't see anything. We're looking for the over 179 here. I don't see anything else. Let's see here. 175. BetMGM's got it for minus 115. So we'll track that up there and go with BetMGM. So let's go ahead and get that plugged in, track that up, and we will continue down our list here. I think Oklahoma is an excellent team, offensively and defensively. Let's look at those sides first. I'm going to be talking first about Oklahoma minus 6.5. At home, they've been able to do this in their last 6 out of 10 games. On the road, Auburn has only covered that spread in 50% of its games. It was able to get a great road win versus Baylor. But looking at some of these other games, these teams that they've covered the spread against are not on par with what Oklahoma is. Looking at teams that are on par, Georgia, on par with Oklahoma this year. I think Georgia's team from last year is just as good, or Oklahoma is just as good, if not better, than they were last year. Alabama on the road could not cover the spread. I think looking at this Auburn team this year, their defense did not do a great job in the second half versus Baylor. Baylor threw for, I believe, over 400 yards. I think that John Mateer, Oklahoma's quarterback, is probably a top 5 Heisman contender. I think we'll see him torch this Auburn Tigers defense with his legs. Looking at the Michigan game, I think Michigan and Auburn are pretty much on par with each other. They're evenly matched teams. They have young quarterbacks who don't have a quote unquote a ton of experience. Their arms aren't the greatest in college football yet. And this Oklahoma defense plays extremely aggressive. Look at a guy like Robert Spears Jennings, who is the free safety for Oklahoma. He's all over the field. He's a star for the Sooners defense. I think Oklahoma can absolutely win this game at -6.5. Taking a look, continuing at all of these games, I think Oklahoma has the best chance to win this game by more than 6.5 points. -106 at ESPN. That's a great bet. I actually am going to shop them at -9.5 because I think this game could be a rout, and we see ESPN's got it at +125. I definitely think this is something that we're confident in. However, my official pick is going to be -6.5, ESPN -106. To buy 3 points, you're only getting about 30-ish points of value. I don't think that's the right play there. So I will go ESPN -6.5, Oklahoma. The next thing I want to talk about, team props. Auburn on the road has only gone over 19.5 points 40% of the time. Oklahoma at home is only allowing teams to go over 19.5 points in 30% of their last 10 games. And looking at some of these on par teams, Michigan, Alabama, Tulane, Houston, I think that's where Auburn kind of sits here on the road. I don't think they're as good as Tennessee was last year. I don't think they're a playoff team capable of winning a playoff game. I think Auburn has the potential to get to the playoffs, but going on the road here with a quarterback who does not throw a ton, I think 19.5 is just a little too much. As a matter of fact, here you can get 20.5. If you could get to that 21.5 for better than -160, I would definitely consider that. But 19.5 for -102 at FanDuel is where we're going to be tracking this up. Let's find that under night. Let's make sure we click the under and go to under 19.5 -102. We'll go ahead and clock that in. And then I think that that's all the props. Actually, one more prop here. I know everybody loves an anytime touchdown play. I will offer you an anytime touchdown play right here. It's going to be Tory Blaylock is his name. He is going to become the bell cow back for Oklahoma. I think he's been getting a little bit more of the rush attempts throughout the first 3 games for Oklahoma. And right now he gets 35% of the red zone rush share. Oklahoma, by the way, running 74% of the time in the red zone. This Auburn defense, by the way, has yet to allow a rushing touchdown. But looking at this Auburn defense last year, which in my opinion, they're very similar on the front 7, they allowed the 82nd most rushing touchdowns per game, or 82nd, or they were 82nd in the country in allowing running touchdowns. So I think this Oklahoma offense, which is very run centric, in my opinion, is going to get a rushing touchdown today. And at +115, I would take that. I would also take a John Mateer anytime touchdown. Matter of fact, we'll plug both of those in. Actually, never mind. Profit X is the only place that you could get him plus odds. I don't like minus odd anytime touchdown play, so we'll stay away from that, and we'll go with Tory Blaylock anytime touchdown +115 with Fanatics. Let's plug that in and continue. Moving on, I think that's the last play of this game. So I've got 4 total plays here. Those are the ones to look at for the Oklahoma-Auburn game. Moving on, we've got 45-ish minutes left. We're going to continue to talk about these big games. Let's look at Michigan-Nebraska, which I think a lot of people have decided is maybe the biggest game of the day. There are four props that I'm looking at, or three props that I'm looking at, and one long shot. First up, we're going to go to player props. We're going to talk about the run game. Justice Hayes, anytime touchdown, is minus 115, I believe. Yeah, minus 115 at FanDuel. This guy has been the focal point of this Michigan offense. If we go back and take a look, let's scroll up and look at Justice Hayes, or Haynes, I guess, a former Alabama guy who transfers to Michigan. Man, he has been getting the lion's share of the carry, 16, 19, 14, and he's averaging over 125 yards per game. I believe he's top 5 in the country in yards per game, and he scored 5 touchdowns in his first 3 games with Oklahoma. And as you can see, going back to his Alabama days, he was the red zone threat for the Crimson Tide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 touchdowns in his last 7 games for Alabama. Extremely impressive stuff. And at minus 115, I think that's great value. I think if Michigan's going to score a touchdown, it's going to be on the ground here versus Nebraska. That's going to be the first one that we'll be tracking. Next up, I want to talk about some player props for Nebraska. First, we're going to talk about my guy, Dylan Raiola. This is one of my favorite quarterbacks in the country. And as we can see in these big games versus Wisconsin, USC, UCLA, well, not necessarily UCLA, but Ohio State, Indiana. These are the big games. Indiana, Ohio State, USC, Wisconsin, Iowa, their rival, Cincinnati. Nebraska leans on this guy in an unfathomable way, considering that he was a true freshman last season. I thought he did an excellent job versus big name opponents last year for being so young. I think he's shown a tremendous amount of improvement. As you can see here versus Cincinnati, 42 attempts, 33 completions, 243 yards, 2 touchdowns. He played a great game. Now, he's not the dual threat I think a lot of people thought that he might be. This is going to sound obvious, guys, but he reminds me a lot of Patrick Mahomes. I'm just saying. He looks like him. He acts like him. His hair is the same way. The way he throws is extremely similar. I think they have the same quarterback coach. There's just so many different similarities between these two guys. And I think looking at what Dylan Raiola is capable of, to me, in this offense so far this season, he is the focal point. And in big games, they lean on him. So my prop that I'm going to be taking here is over 18.5 completions. We can see that we get this at minus 110 using Hard Rock. But once again, I've said it earlier in the stream, Hard Rock is not a book that everybody has access to, but Underdog is. So we're going to be tracking this up. I think if Nebraska is going to win this game today, it's going to be on the back of Dylan Raiola. And one of these guys that coincides with Raiola over receptions is my man Emmett Johnson, who is now the clear and away running back 1 for Nebraska. As we can see here, 32 touches for Emmett Johnson versus Cincinnati, 7 receptions. So what I'm looking at here is I'm going to take a wee bit of a long shot play here. I'm looking at this over receptions line. I'm going to go over 3.5 for plus 189 at Underdog. He's hitting this in 60% of his last 10 games. And the games that he's not, let's take a look. UCLA, I believe, was a blowout loss. He was not the running back 1 there. He had 3 versus Indiana. He was the receiving back for this team last year, as you can see here, 7, 6, 6, 4, 7. And then Houston Christian, that was a blowout. And same as Akron, he just didn't play the whole game. I think we're absolutely going to see him catch at least 4 passes today at plus 189. If you don't love that, plus or over 2.5 is definitely the safe play to go. He's hit that in 70% of his last 10 games. I just like the plus 189 because I think that, we're talking about buying 90 points of value for just 1 more reception. That to me is a good play there. Let's go ahead and track that for 10. Moving on, we're going to continue to talk about some of these games or some of these other props that I have. Actually, there's one more stretch prop that I have for this Michigan-Nebraska game before we move on, because I believe we've got 1, 2, 3 more games to talk about, and I'll go a little bit more in depth. So looking at the long shot plays here, Michigan has allowed quite a few or not quite a few. They've allowed touchdowns to tight ends in I think the 2 out of their first 3 games. And so Luke Lindenmeyer, who has not gotten a ton of red zone targets, is a guy that I think that Dylan Raiola leans on when the games are important. Taking a look at his game log versus Cincinnati, 5 targets, 5 receptions, 47 yards. I think that he becomes tight end 1 for this team, or he has already become tight end 1 for this team. And I think an anytime touchdown at plus 550 is, if you're looking for a long shot in this game, something to, hope for a miracle, I guess, that might be the play at plus 550. Emmett Johnson at plus 100. I like that as an anytime touchdown, but I don't love it. The only one that I really, really like is Justice Hayes at minus 115. I don't like taking minus odds for anytime touchdowns, but I'm sure you can find some kind of profit boost out there somewhere where you can get this plus. This is the focal point of the offense. He will be the guy in the red zone to go score a touchdown. Be sure to look at that guy. Now, sides-wise, I lean Indiana, but I don't love Indiana. Look at Michigan in their last 5 games. The only one that they've covered a 1.5-point spread against on the road is Ohio State, their rival. Looking at Oklahoma, they, for the most part, were out physicaled on defense, which to me was surprising. Looking at Indiana, they struggled offensively. Similarly to Washington and Illinois, they had some major quarterback problems last year. I think they've got some of those solved, but Nebraska has that continuity and consistency, and it's kind of translated throughout the last 5 games. Very impressed with what this Nebraska, or last 6 games, excuse me. I'm very impressed with what this Nebraska team has been able to do specifically at home. They're covering a 1.5-point spread 80% of the time, and a lot of these games are blowouts. Obviously, Akron, Houston Christian, we don't have to talk about that. But Wisconsin, Colorado last year were very impressive. Illinois was a college football playoff caliber team. UCLA, I don't really know what happened in that game. I'd have to take a look at the box score. I believe actually I can do that. Looking at Dylan Raiola, maybe he was, it looks like he might have gotten injured that game because Heinrich Haerberg threw 7 passes in that game. I don't know. I think that this Nebraska team is trending upwards. They've been extremely dominant at home versus Cincinnati in that first game. I think they struggled a little bit offensively just because it was the first game of the season. Michigan has showed me a lot of promise so far, but that win versus New Mexico, not that impressive. Obviously, they dominated Central Michigan. Nothing to write home about there. And then the one game that they go on the road to play a good team, they struggled tremendously offensively. I think this Nebraska game, this is probably the biggest game in Nebraska Cornhuskers history in the last, I think 10 years. I think Nebraska's fans are going to be rocking. So I lean minus 1.5, but I'm not officially picking that. All right, now hang on one second, guys. I gotta take a drink of water. I'm getting a little bit of a lightheaded here. It's been a hell of a day so far. We're 53 minutes into this stream. Shout out to everybody watching. Be sure to look me up on social media at Plaisant on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Thanks, guys. Let me take a drink real quick. Okay, feeling rejuvenated. We have about 30 minutes left before kickoff, and we have 3 more games to talk about. I'm going to talk about this Tulane Ole Miss game briefly before I get into the other 2 ginormous games here on the 6:30 slate. Looking at this Ole Miss game, they're at home. Tulane comes on the road with Jake Retzloff, the former BYU quarterback. Player props wise, he has dominated in the run game. It's been extremely impressive. In his last 3 games, he's averaging damn near 90 yards per game. So extremely impressive. Actually, I think he's averaging over 90 yards rushing a game. In that game versus Duke, I thought he was extremely impressive. 15 for 23, 245, 63-yard bomb, by the way. I can't remember who it was to, but I mean, he threw a nuke. 4 rushing touchdowns, 17 carries, 111 yards. I think Ole Miss struggles against dual threat quarterbacks. I mean, we can see it here. Let's take a look. Talon Green, a dual threat guy. He was tremendous. Let me look and filter the rush attempts here. Filter rush attempts, and we'll talk about 11 plus rush attempts. And as you can see here, Ole Miss does not do well against dual threats. I mean, we're going all the way back to 2021. Let's take a look at the last 3 games. Brock Vandegrift, I would not describe him as a dual threat. That 17 rush attempts probably has a lot of sacks attached to it. But Jackson Arnold did a pretty good job on the ground versus Ole Miss last year. I think Talon Green exposed what this Ole Miss defense is weak against this upcoming season, and that is running outside the tackles. Looking at running back ones, I believe Maurice Turner is injured for this game. He's questionable, I believe. So we might see Zuberi Mobley become the running back one. As you can see here, not a ton of player props for this two-lane offense. Limited for Amari Hayes. You just got his receiving yards. I don't like any of these props. The only one that I really am a fan of, let me take a look and make sure I got this right, is Jake Retzlaff under 14.5 rush attempts. That one, you know what? I'm going to X-nay that just because he's around that prop. I mean, the reason I took it is because if you look at Ole Miss, there's only 2 teams that ran for over this. Last year, that was Brock Vandegrift in Kentucky and Jackson Arnold in Oklahoma. Jackson Arnold, obviously, almost a run-first quarterback. I mean, he had more rush attempts than he did completions last year versus Ole Miss. But Retzlaff is sitting around that 14.5 line, which is the one that's even. He got 17 versus Duke last week, but that was at home. I don't love that. The one that I do like, though, is Ole Miss minus 11.5. Looking at Tulane on the road, they played Florida in a bowl game last year, got the doors blown off of them. They played Oklahoma on the road, and that was a rout, and that was with an Oklahoma team who we saw last year was god-awful against or with the pass game, and they were able to put up 34 points on Tulane. Looking at Ole Miss at home, they've covered this 80% of the time. The 2 games that they didn't was Kentucky and Arkansas. Those are SEC opponents. I definitely think this is worth taking, especially at minus 101. Let's see if we can get any kind of comparable odds there with a major sports book. DraftKings minus 108, Fanatics BetMGM at minus 110. Any of those are big time official picks from me. That's the only one that I have for this Ole Miss game. Ole Miss, I believe, is missing their starting quarterback for the start of the season. I think his name is Austin. Oh gosh, I can't think. Austin Simmons, excuse me. I mean, this guy, I think, graduated high school 2 years early. He's already gotten his undergraduate degree and is looking for his master's. I think he's a junior in college. This guy's insanely intelligent, but he has an ankle sprain, I believe. Chambliss, who was the FCS Heisman winner last year, will be starting. Don't see any usable props here for him. I don't think that you will for most sports books. So stay away from the props in this Ole Miss green or Tulane game. The one that I like is Ole Miss minus 11.5. I'd buy that all the way up to 13.5, but for an official pick, I'll take minus 11.5. So let's continue. Once again, guys, be sure to take a look at Doink Sports. This is a great tool to leverage and educate yourself. You can see if what you're thinking lines up with the math, the statistics of all of these games, not to mention looking at, like, for example, sides here. You can shop the lines. You can see what sports books are offering what. Like, let's say you've got an ESPN bet account and you want to take this game minus 11.5, but you can get it down here at DraftKings at minus 108. I mean, you're buying 7 cents on the dollar, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it means more than you think. And that's why you've got to check out Doink Sports. Be sure to use code PLIZONT, that's PLIZONT, for 25% off of anything that you purchase using the platform. So let's continue, and we're going to talk about the last 2 games I think we'll be able to get in depth in. In my opinion, this is the biggest game of the day. The Fighting Illini head to Indiana. They're battling it out with the Hoosiers. My gut is telling me take Illinois on the money line. but that is not an official pick that I'll be making here simply because Doink Sports does not back it up. Indiana at home is a heavy favorite. I mean, looking at even some of the games versus Big Ten teams, Nebraska, Maryland, Washington, Purdue, they have blown those teams out of the water. I mean, 66-0 on a Power Four team is extremely impressive. And this Indiana team, yes, has a lot of transfers, including their quarterback, Fernando Mendoza, but I think that offense is rolling just as good as it was last year. 73 points against Indiana State, 56 against Kennesaw State. Now, they struggled early on versus Old Dominion, but I think that was just kind of first game jitters. Old Dominion, by the way, has got a pretty good team for a group of 5 roster. So I would be on the lookout for this Indiana offense. I think they're extremely explosive. The Illinois defense, by the way, unbelievably aggressive. I believe they're top 5 in the country in sacks. They've got 10 sacks on the year so far. They took care of business versus Duke. But as we've seen so far in the season, that Duke win is looking a little bit less impressive. It was on the road, which is great, but I don't know how I feel about the Illinois defense versus this RPO style Indiana offense. I think that it's favorable just because with the RPO system, you're looking at making quick decisions. And if you have man to man coverage, like for example, on a slant route RPO read option look, okay, quarterback's got the ball, right? He's got the ball. He's about to hand it off to his running back, and he's looking at either a tight end out route or a wide receiver slant. If you're running man to man, you've got guys on those routes. And so he's more likely to hand that ball off, which means you can play more aggressive and closer to the line of scrimmage. So, with that being said, I think both of these teams have a lot of strengths that play into each other. I cannot pick this game officially. I don't think I do like Illinois +7. I'll see. Let me check my notes here and make sure. Yeah, I did not take that at all in my official picks. The one that I did, though, is first quarter. Oh, it's moved to -2.5. I'm taking it away now. I do not like -2.5. I definitely think this Illinois team can cover that. We're going to stay away from that. We're going to take a look at mainly player props. Let me take another quick sip of water here. So, looking at player props, there's quite a few that I like, starting with Fernando Mendoza, over 18.5 completions. Let's see. Let's scroll up and find my guy, Fernando Mendoza. He has been sitting right on that line at 19 completions to start his time with Indiana. But as we see going back to last year, I mean, this is a Cal team that he was on last year that relied on him to an unbelievable degree. And I definitely think Indiana, if they're going to win this game, is going to have to pass the football. And that's why I think, even though we're seeing a limited amount of pass attempts here, they've yet to play a really good opponent in Illinois. Looking at this game versus Old Dominion, a much closer game, obviously. He attempted 31 pass attempts. I think that number will be closer to 34-ish attempts in this game. So I definitely think looking at either of these props and taking the over. Matter of fact, I'll go ahead and take the over 28.5. I think that one is probably better. Let's go ahead and get that in and track that up. I think that's the better prop to take. I think this Illinois team is not going to go away. Indiana's going to be forced to pass the football, maybe even late into this game. And so I think Fernando Mendoza over 28.5 attempts is a good prop to look at. Moving on, there are a couple of Illinois props that I like. Let's take a look at those. Let me pull those. Or I'm sorry, there's there's one more Indiana prop I like for this game, and that's Elijah Surratt under 73.5 yards. If we look at wide receiver ones versus Illinois, once again, they play extremely aggressive defensively. They play tight man-to-man coverage. They've only allowed this in 3 of their last 10 games, and the vast majority of these are versus Big Ten opponents. Looking at Indiana, Elijah Surratt has only gone over this 73.5 2 times in his last 10 games. Now, I think this is far and away Indiana's wide receiver one. Omar Cooper has been getting a good amount of the target share to start this season. Surratt, of course, averages around, I think early on in the season, he's averaging around like 25, 26% of the target share. They just have not converted to yards yet. 5 targets, 3 receptions for 44 yards, 5 targets, 3 receptions, 23 yards. Now, obviously, this is in a blowout game. This is also in a blowout game, though. So it's hard to judge. I lean the Indiana or the Illinois defense here. So under 73.5, you can actually buy it up to under 74.5 for, I mean, honestly, you could just go ahead under 75.5 using Fanatics. We'll track that up there at minus 115. I think I like those odds. We'll go ahead and track that. And that is going to be it for my props. Initially, looking up at Luke Altmaier, I liked his under 28.5 passing attempts. He's only gotten that in 4 of his last 10 games. Indiana has only allowed 15 completions in their last 10 games. I don't love where this is at. I think if Indiana is going to win this game like it's projected at -7, that means that Illinois is going to be down for the majority of this game, and that means that they'll be passing the ball a decent amount. Luke Altmaier is not a high volume guy. Let's take a look at his last 30 games. We can see that he's only thrown for over 35 attempts, 2 times in his whole college career. He's only thrown for over 35 attempts. So to say this 28.5 is, kind of a lock would be a mistake here. I don't know, honestly. So we'll stay away from that. I see the fantasy report is back. Welcome in, my friend. Sent you a DM on Insta. I will check that out. I'll have to look at my message request. Apparently, I don't get notifications for message requests, so I'll take a look at that. So, anyways, the Miami Dolphins, by the way, the fantasy report, they were looking kind of good early on in the game. Now, fourth quarter, that was rough, but man, I was kind of thinking there that money line play was not that bad. But let's focus back up into this game. Let's talk about what really matters. This game, in my opinion, is a wash when it comes to the over, under, and the spread. My gut says Illinois is going to outright win this game. I think taking them +7 is a safe play, but just looking at Indiana at home, they've been dominant, and that's something that I'm kind of scared of. Illinois has been able to win big games on the road. Rutgers, Duke, they've kept games versus Penn State and Oregon kind of competitive. That Oregon game ended up being a blowout, but I don't think it was that bad early on. Iowa on the road, I thought they looked really good defensively. Minnesota, they got a gutsy win last year. I just think Indiana, they're taking a step back from their playoff appearance last year, but I don't think that they're that much worse. Once again, my gut says Illinois money line. I would lean Indiana +6.5, maybe +7. You can get +7 at Bet365, but I'm not 100% confident in that, so I will not be recommending it here today. Let's get into the last game, the last big game that I'm able to talk about. That's Florida, Miami. This would have been the biggest game of this slate if Florida didn't have such a disappointing start to the season. Let's hop right into it. Okay, so this Florida Gators team offensively has been atrocious, but defensively, I think they have been tremendous. Looking at USF, a team that was able to run the ball as good as USF did, Florida's defense was a bend, don't break. Very similarly to this LSU team. LSU, I believe, only scored 13 points offensively. They had a pick 6, I believe, off of DJ Lagway, who, by the way, threw 5 interceptions in that game. There are 2 props that I like for Miami. I think this Miami team is different from last year because they're extremely physical. Now, Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher Jr. last year were able to run the rock very effectively versus not so great teams. But looking at the games like Syracuse, Iowa State, and Georgia Tech, I don't think they were able to run the ball that great. So I think the difference here is that Miami looks amazing on the ground. Looking at player props, let's go and check out Mark Fletcher Jr. 15 carries for 66 yards. That doesn't sound that impressive, but that Notre Dame defense is unbelievable against the run. And while we're looking at this, Florida has been really soft against the run when looking at backs that run for over 13 attempts. As we can see here, they've only allowed over 75 and a half yards to get against running back ones in 4 of their last 10 games. But look at some of these rush attempts. I mean, Alvin Isaac, only 5. O'Shawn Ross Jr. I mean, this is Long Island University. This is not, this is not Alabama we're talking about here. But Mackay Hughes last year, I don't even Lawrence Tofili. I don't even know who that is for Florida State. But looking at filtering out rush attempts, this is another great tool that you can use. Mark Fletcher, by the way, has been the bell cow for Miami throughout the start of this season. Didn't get a ton of run versus Bethune-Cookman because that was a blowout. But versus Notre Dame, 15 carries. Versus USF, 16 carries. So we'll just filter this out and look at Florida versus backs for over 13 attempts. This is a great tool that you can use using Doink Sports. Looking at the last 5 games for Florida, this defensive front is pretty similar to last year. And Dylan Sampson, Nate Frazier, Jarrett Gibson, Caden Durham in both of these games was easily climbing over this 76.5. We can shop this around and see if we can find something a little bit better. You can get 72.5 on the over for -114 using FanDuel. That's what we'll be tracking here. I think that this is a Mark Fletcher come out game. This is not a Florida team that I am in love with. I started out doing a preview on Florida for the start of the season. I had them going 10-2. Obviously, that was a freezing cold take. They're 1-2, and they still have Miami tonight, Texas A&M, Tennessee, Georgia, Ole Miss, Florida State on their schedule. It is looking really tough for the Gators. Now, I've said all this to say I think they can keep this game close. And I'm thinking they might just win it. Now, there's no statistics out there to back me up on this. Florida has been not so great against the spread in their first couple of games here. They did not cover versus LSU. They did not cover versus USF. Miami has looked amazing. Now, they were 3-point favorites, I believe. Or maybe, no, I think they were 3-point underdogs against Notre Dame. And so they covered that spread. But looking at the 7.5 at home, Miami has done this in 7 of their last 10 games. The ones that they've struggled against, Virginia Tech, which they should have lost last year, by the way. That Hail Mary was a completed pass. I'm just saying. But Notre Dame was able to get that offense going in the second half. Miami did a great job of stopping them. The over-under is kind of what I'm favoring out of any of these picks. Under 50.5 to me would be a good play. I don't know if Florida's offense can get going. I mean, they've only scored 10 points and 16 points in their last 2 games. That's not something that I love. Miami, by the way, has offensively been tremendous. 27, 45, 49. And this, by the way, USF team is a common opponent. As we could see here, Florida lost to South Florida 18-16. Meanwhile, the very next week, Miami blew South Florida out of the water 49-12. That was kind of a weird rain delay game. I thought South Florida had a better chance if that game was continuous. But with that being said, there's not a lot that I love here on either team props sides. The over-under, looking at the over-under for both these teams, Florida is consistently in their last 7 or 8 games hitting the under. Looking at on the road here, they're allowing a decent amount of points, but looking at the last 2 games on the road, Florida State, LSU, that kind of spooks me here. Miami at home, by the way, has been great with the over-under. So we have just 2 conflicting views here. The model, in my opinion, does not show either or. I'm going to stay away from the sides. If I had to go with anything, I think I would lean the under, but not an official pick. Anytime touchdown play, looking at some of these props, Florida has one guy that I think is a consistent touchdown threat, and that's Jaden Ball. Jaden Ball in the run game gets 37% of the red zone rush share. Florida, by the way, in the red zone is a pass heavy team. So fading Jaden Ball here is not a bad idea. I do not like that he's minus odds for an anytime touchdown. There is a guy that is a plus anytime touchdown, and I'm shocked about that. I mean, obviously, this is using ProfitX. Looking at the other ones, we've got FanDuel at minus 185. Mark Flesher, 2 touchdowns plus 295. I think that is great value. This is not a play that I would usually recommend, but looking at his abilities, he scored 2 touchdowns versus South Florida, two touchdowns versus Bethune-Cookman. Didn't score one versus Notre Dame, but this is a Florida team, like I showed you, that's soft against the run. He gets 54% of the red zone target share, and Miami is a very heavy red zone rushing team. So I think if they get in the red zone, they're going to be handing the ball to Mark Fletcher. I think he can score 2 touchdowns. Chalk it up for plus 295. I like that a lot. And ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this stream. Those are all of the games that I have covered. I think recapping all of this, we have let's take a look at the start here. We did TCU, SMU, Utah, Texas Tech, Arkansas, Memphis. Let's see any other ones. Nebraska, Michigan, Oklahoma, Auburn, Ole Miss, Tulane. We talked about, let's see, the last 2 big games we talked about, Illinois, Indiana, and Florida, Miami. Real quick, in the last 5 or so minutes of this stream, let me know if you have any questions regarding any of these games or, quite frankly, any other game. I mean, I could talk about Baylor, Arizona State, Air Force, Boise State, but while I let those questions pour in, if there are any, I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to recap all of my props that I ended up taking. Let's take a look here at our tracking. This is what's great about Doink Sports. I'm going to plug it one more time, guys. Be sure to check out doinksports.com. You can get so much information out of this website. I mean, you can look at the game overview. You can see the weather out here. It is a clear forecast, 80-degree weather. You can look at what kind of stadium they're going to be playing in. It's an outdoor stadium with turf for this Florida Miami game. It's Hard Rock Stadium, obviously, where the Dolphins play as well. You can see the ATS record against the spread, Florida and Miami. You can look at every single quarterback, running back, wide receiver, defensive statistic humanly possible over the last 5, the last 10, the last 15, the last 30 games for each of these teams. It's a great tool, guys. Check it out, doinksports.com. Use code PLIZONT, that's PLIZONT, for 25% off any package of your choosing at Doink Sports. Be sure to take a look at it. So, to conclude, let's look at our bets that we've tracked, and we'll start from the top down. Mark Fletcher, over 2 touchdowns. He's done this in 2 of the first 3 games. He receives a ton of target share in the red zone. I love that pick. I'm pairing that with over 72.5. This is a Florida team when faced with a bell cow back like Fletcher. The running back is going over in 70% of their games. Elijah Surratt, he's only hit over 75.5. I think in 30% of his last 10 games. Illinois is only allowing this in 20% of their last 10 games. Fernando Mendoza, over 28.5 passing attempts. I think this is going to be a relatively close game. Fernando Mendoza at Cal was a quarterback that would be, or that was relied upon. He hit this in the game versus Old Dominion, which was a relatively close game for Indiana. Moving into the Michigan-Nebraska game, Emmett Johnson, over 3.5 receptions, and Dylan Raiola, over 18.5 passing completions. I think these two pair together. Michigan's defense is excellent. And what you want to do for a young quarterback going up against an elite defense is you want to get him some layups. Emmett Johnson is by far the bell cow. In game number 1 versus Cincinnati, he had 32 touches, 7 receptions. I think looking at this line, we have it at over 3.5 for plus 189. I love it for plus 2.5. If you think he's not going to catch 3 balls, I think you're out of your mind, because this is probably the second highest targeted receiver on the Nebraska offense. So these two pairing together, is an excellent idea. Justice Hayes, anytime touchdown, minus 115. If you're looking at FanDuel, DraftKings, BetMGM, I'm sure that there's some kind of profit boost here that you can get this plus odds. I don't love anytime touchdowns with minus odds, but Justice Hayes has been the focal point of this Michigan offense when talking about young quarterbacks on the road versus, I think, a Nebraska defense that's pretty good. You give it to Justice Hayes. Where Nebraska defense has struggled is in the run. They're 75th in the country in the run game. So I think Justice Hayes anytime touchdown at minus 115 is a great play. Moving into more anytime touchdowns, Torrey Blaylock plus 115. He gets the second highest touchdown share in the red zone, rushing wise. Oklahoma running the football 75% of the time in the red zone. And so, or not 75, 65% of the time in the red zone. So Torrey Blaylock to get one of those touchdowns versus an Auburn defense, which has not been tremendous against the run game. I think that's a worthy pick. So be sure to check that out. Plus 115 using Fanatics. Auburn under 19.5 team total. I think this Auburn team is on par with what Michigan was, and Michigan only put up 13 points. I think we'll see more of the same. I do not think Jackson Arnold is going to pop off in his return game. Brent Venables knows his strengths and weaknesses better than probably anybody else in the country. So at minus 102 using FanDuel there, I think that's a great prop to take. Pairing with that, Jackson Arnold under 175.5. I think that is yet another prop to take. He has struggled throwing the ball throughout his career. He has only hit that prop in one of his first 3 games with Auburn. Didn't do it a ton with Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma's defense is extremely stout. They've made a ton of really good quarterbacks look pedestrian. Jackson Arnold, in my opinion, does not look like a great passing quarterback. And so under 175, I think is a good prop. Another one that I took, by the way, that you can't see because the capabilities of Doink Sports is not there yet. But ladies and gentlemen, it's coming to be able to track your spread picks. So let me scroll back and make sure that I didn't miss one in the Illinois game. I didn't take one in the Illinois game. I didn't take one in the Florida game. I did take one in the Ole Miss game. That's Ole Miss minus 11.5. You can get that for minus 108 at DraftKings. Be sure to check that out. My projected score for this game is Ole Miss 40, Tulane 21. I think Ole Miss handedly takes over that 11.5, even though their starting quarterback is injured. Chambliss, the backup, was a Heisman winner in the FCS. I think he's a phenomenal replacement. He was able to tear up Arkansas last week. So I think Ole Miss's defense will step up a little bit there, and they will win that game by more than 11.5. Moving on, there is a prop that I would like to take in this game that you don't see here. And that's Oklahoma minus 6.5. You can get that at minus 108 using ESPN. Man, I am going props and picks galore today. I mean, I think we're over 20-something picks here. So let's continue. SMU, TCU. Let's look at that game. I have 3 picks here. Under 32.5 first half points. Both of these teams are not hitting that in more than 30% of their games, I believe. TCU's defense, I think, is a lot better than SMU has seen this season so far. I don't think that Kevin Jennings is going to be able to come in on the road and tear up TCU's defense. Vice versa, I think TCU's offense is really good, but I don't think that they're great. So I think this is going to be a relatively lower scoring projected first half. I think we're looking somewhere on along the lines of like 17-10, so like around 27-ish points in this first half for this game. So be sure to take that. Josh Hoover, under 37.5. I think TCU handily wins this game. And so that is a major problem here for Josh Hoover's overpassing attempt. If they're winning by 10 plus points, especially in the second half, they're not going to be throwing the ball around. They will be running the football, milking the clock, and getting out of this game with a win. Moving on, we're going to be talking about our last 2 games here. Arkansas, Memphis. There are 2 or 3 props that I like in this game. You can see 2 of them on the screen here. It's very similar to the Nebraska game where I have Emmett Johnson and Dylan Raiola connected here with completions and receptions. I have the same thing here. Taylon Green on the road throws the ball more than he does at home. I think he's going to complete at least 20 passes, and I think at least 6 of them go to Omega Blake because Omega Blake is averaging 6 receptions so far this season. On the road, you go to your number one guy. Omega Blake has been that this entire season. So pairing these two together, great idea. Last play that I want to talk about for this Arkansas-Memphis game before we get on to the 11 o'clock kickoffs is Arkansas -7. You can get that -110 at Bet365. This Memphis team has been great at home and on the road so far this season, but given what I saw from Arkansas last week versus Ole Miss, I think they're going to come in this game and blow Memphis out of the water. They scored 35 points versus an Ole Miss defense, which I think is a top 30 or top 30 in college football, probably top half of the SEC. So I think this Arkansas offense is going to take advantage of a weak Memphis defense. So give me those two props and give me Arkansas -7. To close this out, I have quite a few for Texas Tech versus Utah. I think this is going to be a relatively low-scoring affair. I like the under 58.5. Shopped that to ESPN -110. I think the standard line is under 57.5. So you can get it a little bit better at ESPN at under 58.5. But player props wise, Cameron Dickey, who's been in a split backfield. I actually have him as over here. I'm going to delete that and we'll go back to this Texas Tech game real quick because I actually wanted him under 61.5. Let's go take a look at that real quick. Give me 1 second. Let's scroll up. Once again, I'm just going to show you how to use Doink Sports player props. We can see here Cameron Dickey. We've been looking at him. Obviously, was not a part of this Texas Tech backfield last year. This season, he's averaging around 11 or 12 carries a game. He's gone over this prop twice, but Utah's defense is extremely stout. I think in a split backfield, under 56.5 is tough. We can shop that to under 61.5 at -112 using FanDuel. So let's go ahead and track that. 11.2, and we'll track that up. Let's finish our summary here. Let's keep scrolling down. We'll talk about the rest of these player props for Texas Tech versus, we're in NFL prop range here. Okay, Baron Morton, he is a good quarterback. This Texas Tech offense has been good, but not necessarily explosive versus good teams. 43.5 is a lot. Utah plays tight man-to-man coverage. I don't think we'll see a pass over 43.5 yards. And at -110 with underdog, I think that's tremendous value. And I believe those are the last props of the game, or last props. Let me check and make sure I've got all that right. Oh, one more prop that I want to add to this is Texas Tech plus 3.5. I think Texas Tech's offense is better than Utah's offenses. Obviously, their defenses are, I would lean Utah, but I don't think Utah, if they are going to win this game, are going to run away with it. I think Texas Tech has the more talented team. If you want to sprinkle the money line, I'd be sure to do that. So with that being said, that's everything that I've got to offer you guys today. I think we're up to 20 plus props overall. Thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you guys next time. Be sure to tune in tomorrow morning for our NFL slate. So with that being said,